welcome to tonight's Brisbane Council meeting. If you would please join us for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, roll call, please.
Please note for the record that all council members are present.
Okay. Do I have?
Motion to adopt the agenda as is.
All right. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We did have a closed session.
Unclosed.
We did have a
Oh,
closed
wait a
session.
minute, you did it at the end, right.
Anything to report out, Michael?
City Council considered in closed session a claim, and upon the report, the council denied the claim, and we will notify the claimant of that decision.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, oral communications. This is an opportunity for anyone in the audience to come before the council regarding a matter that is not on tonight's agenda. So I have some slips here. Michelle, Sam.
Michelle Salmon, Brisbane resident for just about all my life, actually. And I want to speak about two things. And one of them is on the agenda, but I am not staying till midnight to hear it. I think that it is wrong that you are willing to grant yourselves another year past what you were elected for. You were elected for 4 years. I understand that we have to align with the state on elections, but I think that you should have a 3-year term and be duly elected by the public. Right now, I would be horrified if Donald Trump said, well, I want a 5th year. I'm sorry, it's wrong. It should be 4 years that you were elected for, not a 5th year because you want it or because it's convenient. You weren't elected for 5 years. You were elected for 4. And I think it's wrong to add a year. The second part that I'm really upset about is that we're holding a special meeting for you, Lori, because your ego needs to have a special person come and swear you in as mayor, which wasn't elected by the people, it was elected by your colleagues to lead the council. And I'm kind of offended by the fact that we're going to use staff and city resources to have a special meeting just so that you can be sworn in by someone you want to swear you in for your own political agenda. And I'm offended by that. I think it's a misuse of public funds and public resources. Thank you.
All right, that was the only person in regards to oral communications. So we'll move forward. Oh. I have 3 slips here, and they're all under items that are on the agenda. So if you want to come up and talk about something that's not on the agenda, Greg.
Sorry.
Oh.
Honorable Mayor, thank you for hearing me, even though I apparently didn't put my card in a good place. After the last City Council meeting, I had the pleasure to talk to Mr. Jonathan Sharfman, and he made some very good and interesting points, but he also made a point that I found rather shocking and somewhat alarming. He told me that he was not allowed to present all of the information that his expert witnesses had at one of the meetings, and after reading thousands and thousands of pages and giving entire meetings dedicated to the applicant, I found this was some sort of tragedy, and I told him so. But the reason I'm telling it to you is that we are now, again, at the beginning of the process, and the applicant, again, has a large number of opportunities to present all of the information that he wishes to present. So I'd ask you respectfully, please, ask the applicant if there's any information that he did not provide to the Planning Commission, please provide it to you, and please make sure that he comes prepared for his meeting so that he can present all of the information that he needs to present. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Greg. Oh, you didn't want to speak. Okay. And that's Rick. So, okay. Before the presentation? Okay, how about this?
Why don't we just move
Why don't
that
we just
up?
take item E under new business, because that's where the slips are coming from. And I'll entertain a motion to move it after oral communication.
I'd make that motion.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Anybody else have something that's not on tonight's agenda? We're all good. Okay. So next up, under new business item E, consider introduction of ordinance 614 to change the year at which city council elections must be held to even-numbered years, statewide elections, and extending the terms of office for current city council members by 1 year. Staff report, please.
Mr. Mayor, member of the council, recent state law provides that under certain circumstances, cities and school districts and special districts which currently hold their elections for their council members or board members in odd-numbered years are required to change that election date to even-numbered years, either in November or June of those years. And the rationale for the legislation is that there is greater voter turnout at those statewide elections in June or November of even-numbered years than in the November elections in odd-numbered years. So to determine whether or not your particular jurisdiction must comply with this requirement, the city clerk took a look at the relative number of voters who turned out in the most recent municipal election and compared that to the statewide elections over the past 4 cycles. Based on that information, it was determined that the percentage in the statewide elections was greater than the 25% threshold established under the state law, and as a consequence of that, the council must take action, come up with a plan such that the election cycle will be in even-numbered years. Accordingly, the council conducted a workshop in October of 2016 in which it looked at a number of different options in which to accomplish that. Those options included extending the term of the current members by 1 year. It also included options such as having the elections in 2017 and 2019, but then having those terms of office just for a 3-year term in order to get it to the the even numbered of years. After council discussed the item, the council thought that that the option that would extend the current terms from 4 years to 5 years was the best option that it wanted to put on the agenda for its further consideration. Its rationale being that given the items that the council has on its plates, for example, the Baylands matter that the council will be considering in 2017, that it made good sense for continuity's sake to make sure the current council stays in place until that Baylands process is completed, which may be beyond 2017. This was similar to what the council decided with respect to extending the term of office for planning commissioners whose terms were also expiring, but when they were in the midst of considering the Baylands project as well, and kept the planning commissioners then on the commission until it completed its action. Accordingly, we've drafted an ordinance that would extend the council members' terms whose terms end in 2017 to 2018, and thereafter those terms would then be 4 years to 2022, and the council members' terms whose terms end in 2019 would be extended to 2020, and thereafter then the 4-year term to 2024. That's the way it's drafted. We can certainly revise the ordinance if that's the council's desire, but based on the council workshop and direction, that's the presentation. Any questions about the legislation or the ordinance? I'll be glad to answer that.
All right. Any questions for Michael?
I don't have any questions for staff.
Okay. I have a question. So in regards to voter turnout, so going to the even years will increase, based upon historical data, the increase voter turnout. There's also costs involved as well. So going to the even years, what kind of cost savings are we looking at?
Right now, when, for example, the 2015 election, because there were a number of other jurisdictions within San Mateo County that conducted their election at the same time, all those costs were able to be shared, and the cost in 2015, for example, was not terribly significant. If other jurisdictions decide to not hold their election in 2017 and move to 2018 or other even-numbered years, and those jurisdictions that continue to hold those elections in odd-numbered years, 17 and 19, there will be an additional cost because essentially there won't be other jurisdictions to share that cost with. The city clerk has been in contact with the registrar of voters to try to get a better sense of what that cost would be. The registrar was not able to provide that information definitively. We do know that when there have been special elections held, that the cost of the city has been around $30,000 to $35,000 when there's been a special election in the city, and there might be a presumption that if the city were the only one conducting an election in November of 2017, that cost might be in that neighborhood. But we can't definitively say that at this particular point.
And then up until this point, other cities that have had discussions and voted on this particular item, only San Mateo has voted to have a 2017 election, and the others have opted to extend by 1 year?
That's correct.
Okay. All right.
Have all other cities in the county voted on this already, or there's still some that have yet to decide?
It's about half and half right now in terms of the cities. Most of them have it on the agenda either in December or January, as you do, but the ones who have taken action is as the mayor has described.
All right. So we do have some slips. So let's see. I just want to go in the right order. No. Sharon, do you want to come on up?
Thank you. I appreciate that you take the time to hear us. And I'm pleading ignorance, which isn't a good thing. I didn't know about this until the other day when I read it in Nextdoor about different people's opinions. And my first thought was I was sick to my stomach because the point in time that we live in right now, we want to be as diligent as we can to make sure that our people in this city feel that they have made a choice. And by you taking that opportunity to extend your time for 1 year means that we did not have that choice. And I feel that we need to be as transparent as possible as a city, especially now. And I also read very happily in the Star today that we have a surplus in this city, which is great, and we're being very fiscally sound, that I think we could maybe afford to have a $30,000 election in 2017 and elect people for a knowledgeable 3-year term, knowing you're going in for 3 years as opposed to somebody going in for 4 and then extending their own term to 5. And my first thought was, I do understand that other cities are doing it, but I default to my mother who said, if everybody else jumps off the bridge, does that mean you're going to do it too? And I don't think that it's the right thing to do. I think it's the right thing to do that you honor your 4-year term and that we have an election that we've already discussed as an option for 3 years for the next 2 sets of terms, and then continue on in the even year elections. And I wholeheartedly agree, especially as a Democrat, which isn't important, except that we do seem to fall short in off-year elections, and it will be to our advantage to be in line with the major elections. However, I don't think this is the way to do it. I feel that we should go the route of 3-year terms and not extend our terms an extra year. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. Peter Grace? You can comment up, Michelle.
There's a couple more points I'd like to make. Referring to extending the Planning Commission's terms, the Planning Commission sits at your pleasure. So I don't feel that that was a wrong decision if that was what the council decided to do. But you sit at our pleasure, the people. And the people elected you for 4 years. I don't care what a special election costs. I don't care if only one person shows up to vote. I think you need to do the right thing. There have been many times when people served only 2 years. My father, his first term, and John Turner's first term were 2 years because they were the high vote getters when we became a city. We've had other terms that were shortened because we moved from an April election to a November election. I think you need to do what's right here and not, I think it's a huge amount of hubris to automatically give yourselves another year. You were elected for 4 years. If you want to be elected for 5 years, then set it at 5 years when you enact the ordinance to line up with the stars of the state. But I think 3 years is reasonable, and it's, elections are won and lost by one person in Brisbane, as you all well know, and not all incumbents get automatically rubber stamped and reelected, as you well know. And I think it is wrong of you to assume that the people of Brisbane want you for an extra year. You need to court them and let them decide that they want you for another year because you were duly elected for 4 years. And I don't mean to beat a dead horse, but I feel very strongly about this, very strongly about it. And I know a lot of other people too, including some of those amongst you. And so I hope you make the right decision here and not automatically give yourselves an extra year because it's too inconvenient to go out and talk to your constituents and run again, or it's too expensive for the city who can afford $500,000 for a skate park and a new library, but we can't afford $35,000 for a general election of city council who represent the people of Brisbane during an extremely important time. And I don't really care what the timeline is on the Baylands. That's them. This is Brisbane, and you speak for the people of Brisbane, and you need to be duly elected to the time that you serve. Thank you.
Are you okay to go now, Peter?
Good evening. My name is Peter Grace. I live at Kings Road in Brisbane. I completely agree with and support the need to move to even year elections. The challenge is how are we going to get there? Please do not follow the City Attorney's recommendation to extend the terms of the current council members by a year to bring the elections in line with the state requirements. I think that's wrong. Please consider holding the elections in the odd years as planned, i.e. 2017 and 2019, but for one year as a way to bring into compliance. I believe this is option 2 as laid out by the City Attorney, but I'm not absolutely certain. As others referred, please consider the perception of what accepting the Attorney's recommendation says to the Brisbane electorate. We voted the agreed term and not another term, whether longer or shorter. How other cities choose to solve this problem is another matter. Just because other cities do something does not make it right for every city, including Brisbane. I did not know about the October 2016 workshop. I would have spoken strongly against extending the terms by a year if I'd known that was happening. So the question really becomes is, how do we make sure city government issues and workshops are as well advertised as the day in the park? There'll be more people here speaking about this. I only saw this a couple of days ago on the Facebook page. And as for the cost of $30,000 to $35,000, I would like to know in more detail on what's that based. Is that with people? Is it based on staffing below the library, or is it mail-in? What is it? You know, I've seen numbers used before that sort of scare people, but I'd like to know on what basis this 30 to 35,000 is based, and indeed is whether there are other methods we can use to reduce it. Thank you very much. We agree on where we're trying to go. The problem is, how do we steer the ship there? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Peter. All right, does anybody else want to speak on this matter, Joel? Okay.
Good evening, Honorable City Council members. Joel Diaz. Forgive me for a minute, I had to run down here because you guys moved it up on the agenda, which is good, and thank you for doing that. I just wasn't expecting it. But I would just ask that you don't make this an urgency, matter of urgency. I think the elections are sort of a way of keeping our officials honest. And I'm not suggesting that you guys need to be kept honest or anything like that, but there are some really pressing issues with the Baylands in particular. And we citizens, the well-informed citizens, you know, we've been kind of relying on this election to be 2017 and the timing of it. And there really isn't any urgency to do so. We only need to come up with a plan by 2022. We could let this go until next year or next December and decide then. And if the candidates are truly popular, they will be reelected pretty easily in this town. And I don't think anybody is currently necessarily in any jeopardy of not being reelected. And I think that, you know, the purpose of this new law is to encourage voter turnout and voter participation. And it's kind of ironic that somehow, when we have such critical issues like the Baylands and whatnot, that somehow we're going to short circuit that process and actually deprive the voters and potentially disenfranchise the voters by taking away their planned election 2017. So I'd ask that you do not do that, and please continue with the planned election and discuss this and decide on this matter later. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else on the audience want to speak on this matter? Okay, thank you. Council discussion or any other, you know, I do have a question for the city attorney. So, but does anyone else have any other questions for staff?
I have one question for staff.
Sorry, if you wouldn't mind.
So if we were to do the regular election as planned in 2017 for the regular term, we could do a shortened or lengthened term in 2019, and we would still be in compliance. Is that correct?
That's correct. You could either shorten the terms of those elected in 17 and 19 to 3 years, or you could extend those terms by 1 year for those elected in 17 and 19, and then either way you would be in compliance with the state law.
Okay, that's the only question for staff. Thank you.
I had one all of a sudden.
Okay, Madison.
Okay. I'm not saying I want to do this. I just had a question. What if you're able to shorten one term and lengthen the other? Like, could you do 2017 is 5 years and 2019 is 3, and then the whole council has to be reelected all at once? I'm not saying, I want to know that's not an option, so I'm wondering about that.
Yeah, I think the I haven't seen a situation where the full council is up for election at one time. I don't know there's a state law that would prohibit you from doing that. Whether it's good policy is a different issue. I don't know that you would be precluded from doing that. Although there may well be a state law that indicates that half or 3/5 or so it is staggered, but I just can't tell you that for sure, although my sense of it is there may be a state law that says that's the way they're supposed to be done. I just can't tell you that 100% right now.
Okay, I was just curious because that wasn't an option listed, but I mean, it could be when you're looking at all the different options that's one we haven't discussed.
True.
Okay, just curious.
So, Michael, yeah, I'm going back to when we had the fuel storage measure before the city, and that was an odd year election, and we had council members running, and so you're a council member, and you're also a candidate, and so you can when you're on the dais, you can't really talk about, say, the fuel storage tax, but as a candidate, you could talk about the fuel storage tax. So here we have the Baylands project. So I want you to kind of walk us through, what you could do as a council member and what you can say as a candidate.
Well, in the case of the fuel storage tax measure, that was an actual measure that was before the voters, and certainly the council had placed that on the ballot, and by doing that certainly indicated what arguably its preference was to have it adopted, although certainly you could put a measure out there just so the voters could weigh in on it. But once the measure is on there, then the council, at least with respect to when it's sitting as the council, has to be cautious about what it does in terms of use of public resources to advocate either for or against a measure. On the other hand, a city council member who's running for office has certain First Amendment rights, and as part of one's campaign, one could say, they're either for or against a measure, and again, that's not using city resources as when they're making those kinds of statements. They're doing it as candidate Smith or candidate Jones, whatever.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So the Baylands is a little different because that's a project that is being in front of the council, as opposed, unless you had a situation where you had a measure that involved the Baylands on the same election cycle as a council member.
Okay,
And you have the same issue.
so obviously we're not going to be getting finalizing the Baylands prior to that, and chances are the council will be in its deliberations. As when you're out there on the campaign trail, people are going to ask you questions. They're going to want to know where you stand on certain issues. But as a council member, you want to be respectful of the process, and you want to take in all the information before you give your opinion. But here as a candidate, you might be giving your opinion. So, kind of, what would you do to advise a council member who potentially could be running for re-election?
It's a dilemma, and courts recognize that there can be a real tension between a council member or any candidate running for office and commenting on a project that is before the council, and there's no clear-cut answer, because again, in any community, citizens and residents will want to know where a candidate stands on a matter that affects the community, such as a large-scale project. And again, the kind of decisions, at least that the Baylands poses, is a legislative decision. It's not a quasi-judicial situation where different rules apply. So there's more leeway with respect to what council members can say, both at the dais and as well as on the campaign trail. But there's no bright line rule on these kinds of things, unfortunately.
Okay, so then if a member of the public asks a question about the Baylands development, I guess as a candidate, you would have to say, as a candidate, this is how I feel about it, and really draw the clear line that you're not answering the question as a council member, but you're answering it as a candidate.
That's a pretty fine line.
What about just saying, obviously I haven't made a full-blown decision because there's still information coming in, but as of right now, this is how I feel. I don't know if that's too direct. That
Well,
might be-
so here's the thing about that. I mean,
So,
let me just finish. So, when, there would be others that would run for the council who are not currently on the council. They got free range to respond any way they want, and I would think that as all candidates should have that ability. Just because you're on the council shouldn't handcuff you from being able to express your opinion as a candidate. But again, it's an awkward situation because you're also a council member, and the last thing you'd want to do is to put the city in jeopardy because you want to give that appearance. You've already made a decision prior to having the deliberations.
To follow up
question
on
for
that,
staff, or this is?
Well, no, I think it
The
is, I'm directing this at the
Okay.
city attorney.
Okay,
I mean, my best advice would be, as Councilmember Davis has indicated, my preference would be for a council member, whether on the dais or out campaigning, to say, I'm still, we haven't finished our public hearing yet. We haven't finished our deliberations yet. I want to have all that information before I make an informed decision. That will put you potentially at a
An elected-
political disadvantage with someone who doesn't necessarily have that same kind of issue in front of them.
and to follow up on that question, then what would happen when it's candidates night?
That's what I was just.
And there's 3 out of the 5 council members up for re-election in 2017. It
Yeah.
wouldn't be a noticed public hearing under the Brown Act, so would there be any issue with that sort of discussion happening in a candidates night's forum with respect to the Baylands?
Certainly, because again, you're now at a meeting, as meeting is broadly defined under the Brown Act, and now is collective concurrence occurring outside the regular council meeting. So yes, it could potentially be a Brown Act potential violation.
so I just want to throw this in here as a question, if I may. We're talking about situations that all of the sitting council members have run for election during Baylands process. This process has been going on for years, and every 2 years we have an election in this town that discusses topics that are being voted on by the council. So every person will have that same problem, whether it's during this decision or any other issue that's going to come before us. So it's not a new problem to have an election during hearings.
Is that a question for staff?
Well, would this be any different than any other process that we've gone through?
The only, and again, I don't know the history of issues that may have been before the council when there's election going on, but certainly with respect to the Baylands, that is a project that will, at least it could be, under consideration when the campaign is going on for the 2017 election. Previously, that certainly, the Baylands process was going on, but it may have been during the time the environmental document was being reviewed or other aspects. It wasn't as if that particular project was before the council undergoing public hearings or deliberations. Now, certainly in the past, there may have been other projects that would apply to. I don't have the history on that, but certainly the Baylands is a little different situation now than it was in 15 or 13 or 11.
Do you have any other questions?
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
So just to talk about candidates night one more time, because you would essentially have a quorum at that point. and undoubtedly people are going to ask questions about the bail-in. So then, could the moderator still ask that, and then all three of them, provided they all choose to rerun, not answer, or would those questions be left out?
Well, I don't think that we would be, or at least certainly I would not be in a position to advise a moderator not to ask the questions, but I certainly would counsel the council members that that kind of reaching some sort of collective concurrence among the three of you who would be running, assuming all three of you run again, I would suggest that you wouldn't comment on it because of the potential to have reached a decision outside of the regular meeting.
Okay. Those are all my questions.
How would that be avoidable? If there's a question posed, are you for or against housing, or how do you feel about this development proposal? And what if three of us say, yes, we agree with this, or we agree with that? Then how is it possible to not reach a concurrence?
Well, you would have to defer to answer. You would have to defer answering the question on the basis that you could run the problem of having collective concurrence at a meeting that is not a regular noticed council meeting.
Okay, so, council discussion. Clerk, I know you've been wanting to.
Well, you know, I've gone through 5 elections, and I know what it takes emotionally and the time, the commitment and stuff to put into that. And I've always honored the election process, that how it works. But we have a unique circumstance too, and this is one that was mandated to us. And one thing I don't agree with shortening a term to 3 years at all. I don't think that a person should be running for a 4-year seat and do it 3 years. I don't agree with that. Some people want to say that, but I know how expensive elections are. I've always put a lot of money out of my pocket in my own elections, in addition to taking small donations and stuff. But even for a small town, first one I ran for in '93, was under $1,000. But now it's like $3,000. And you don't even know what you're going to get hit with at the end of the election process, because once the county tabulates everything up, all of a sudden you get a big fat bill, well, this is what it costs and this is your share as a candidate, and you don't even know until a month or two later on what that's going to be. So, I mean, it's, I understand how people feel, they're saying, well, you're doing this, and, you're self-serving, and, and they're angry about it, and I understand it. But this is mandated by the state, and I think our options are either we extend it a year or we extend it 6 months. But not go to the future, because quite frankly, we have this election November. I never decide, I'm the longest sitting council member ever in this city, ever. And I've been elected to 5 full terms, And I never decide when I'm going to run until May, June timeframe, for me personally. Because it's a lot of angst, I go through a lot of emotion, do I want to do this? Do I have the passion? Do I, to continue, things like that, and after my first 2 terms, I had to step away. Just, my personal life was upside down, and for me, for health reasons, I needed to step away. A lot of people asked me to come back after I was gone 2 years and, run again, and I did in 2005, and then again in 2009, but, and again, 2000, 13, whatever it was. But every time that I did, it was just, it was very agonizing, and this job can be very agonizing. Because people are pissed off at you all the time, no matter what you do, and you are a public servant and stuff like that, But when we discussed it, we did talk about what we did with the planning commission, I understand Michelle's point about them, serving at our pleasure. But the prudent course of action for them was to keep them intact, to go through this process. And I think it was a successful process. I think it was a prudent decision. This one, I think, in a way, I feel kind of lucky that, something like this bounced along. And, yeah, with decision that we're either going to make it for some future council of either extending or reducing their term. I don't think it's fair to reduce a term. I don't think it's fair at all. I mean, Cliff, you and I have been through the process a few times. Terry, you've been through it a couple times. Lori once, and Madison once. And you know what it takes. So, for myself, I'm in favor of extending it, and I'd be willing to go a year. But also, I'd look at 6 months. And yeah, it's going to make people angry, and I understand that. And they're going to do what they're going to do. And but I think for us, given what we have, I hear what the city attorney says, but I can't shut up about what I feel during an election process, because that's who I am, and I'm going to speak what's in my heart. And right now, I think a prudent course of action for us would be to extend it, whether it be 6 months or a year. Because I'd like to see this process finished with the Baylands and then move on. And I'm ready to move on tonight.
Madison?
So I have to say, disagreeing with Clark is like the hardest thing ever, because you're my role model. So this is very hard for me to say, especially because when we spoke about this, I felt very strongly that this was the right choice for our city to extend a term, not because of running and how emotional that is and how much time that takes and how this is just convenient to not have to worry about that. But we are going to be going through something that will impact our city for years. And based on the reactions that I am getting tonight, and the emails that I'm getting, and the texts that I'm getting, and the calls that I'm getting, I haven't had one person tell me that they think that this is a good idea. And at the core of what we're supposed to do is listen. And sometimes it's difficult when you feel much different than what the public is telling you. But in this scenario where not a single person has come forward and said, I support you on this, we have to really step back and listen. The reason why I thought extending our terms by a year was purely to protect us as a city, because I think it's important that the council who begins the process of hearing the Baylands is the one that finishes it, just for continuity. At the same time, we're not sitting here making a commitment that we're going to take longer than next year, than November. And so for me to make a decision to protect us for a situation that I don't know will be before us, in exchange for disappointing our constituents and the wrath that undoubtedly we will experience for sure, to me is not worth it. I would rather listen to our constituents and be united and deal with that potential situation if we get there, but we don't know we're going to get there. And if we move forward tonight and we don't extend a term, then we probably need to kick it into high gear and try and commit to getting this finished before then. And I think that we can do it, and it might take more meetings, and I know we've already talked about how difficult that is, but I'm willing to work really hard to make that happen. I don't want you to have to go through an election during that time, but at the same time, we can't have a city divided. And if this is the foot that we, put down now, I think that we're going to lose a lot of trust. And I think that we are going to be making a big mistake. And I don't want to go further in this process with our city not trusting us. Because in this moment, it is so, so, so important that they believe in us and that they have our backs and that they support us. But if they're going in already thinking that they can't trust us, I think that this process is going to be so, so much harder for us. And so because of that, I cannot support this. And I am willing to make it the next term be 5 years or 3 years. I think the person coming in will, obviously they're going to know that, and that will impact their decision whether they want to rerun. If it's a 3-year term, they may not think it's worth it. I'm willing to negotiate on that. But based on what we've heard tonight, it's not worth it to me.
Laura?
This is gonna be a tough one. I understand people are upset and they perceive it as, trying for the council to be trying to, give ourselves an extra year. And I understand people feel that way, but at the same time, I agree with Clark that this is, a state mandate, and given where we are in the Baylands process right now, it's actually like a blessing in disguise, because it's important to have that continuity. Yes, we can't tell if it'll be the same council, at the time we finish the deliberations of the EIR, but I can foresee that if we do keep the election in 2017, that will cause the Baylands to become a politicized issue. And I can foresee it, I can foresee council members who are running for re-election, trying to say that they're going to vote a certain way in order to be able to get re-elected. I think the wiser course of action would be for us to add the additional year, and then if people feel that they're not happy with the decisions that the council members are making, then they can vote accordingly after seeing what the council members do. But I think that to throw the election into the process really distracts from the Baylands, which was something that, obviously we all need to be focusing on, and thinking, and we should be focusing on doing the right thing for the city, not trying to get reelected. So I'm in favor of the recommendation.
Terry?
So, when we originally talked about this in workshop, I didn't like the idea of extending the term, because I do think that what we got elected to is what we should serve. The 2017 election cycle that's coming up isn't something new that's been thrown into the Baylands. We've had it all along. That was the specified term. And so I think that if we put the change off until the 2019 election, the 2017 could have a regular 4-year term, just like it's expected to, or currently listed. And then we change the 2019 term, which would be 2 candidates, 2 seats, I should say, to a 3-year term. And that would get us into compliance. And
17 to for 4 years would be 21, then you'd have to run a one-year election.
Mm-hmm.
No, I think that we could get it,
If 2017, then you'd be 2021, but then you'd have to run a 1 year to get to, because you have to comply by 2022. So it's either the 3 year or the 5 year.
but we would be in compliance because the first election would be,
Yes, but then the next
20.
one, those three would have to then run for 1 year to in 2022, because you have to abide by the state mandate by 2022. So the 3 or the 5. So I'm pretty sure that's correct, isn't it, Michael?
Well, if make sure I'm following Councilmember O'Connell's suggestion, she's saying that 2017 folks would have a 4-year term,
correct,
and then those folks, then, the ones that were elected in 2021 would have a 3-year term. That would
correct.
get you to 2024.
Or you can do 2024. Okay, I thought you
then-
had to finish by 2022.
No, because you'd have in
You wouldn't have an
place,
election.
the 2019 folks would have a
Okay.
3-year term as well, and they would go to 2022, then you would be on a 22.
Okay, all right. My
So the anticipated election that would be held in 2017, which is how we have it now, would still be for a 4-year term, just like we would expect it right now. And that could put us on the schedule where the voters would, and the candidate, would know that the following term in 2019 may be only 3 years. We could make it 5, but I would be willing to do a 3-year commitment if it was
So
Me.
I would too.
And I think having a 1-year election puts too much burden on a candidate. It's hard work. And as I was saying, all of us have run a campaign while the people have asked us about the Baylands. And it's not a new issue. When I first ran, I thought, I ran because of the Baylands. And I thought we'd get to it during my first term, and we didn't. So we don't know if we're even going to get through it in the next 4 years. It's wishful thinking. So I think we should run the scheduled election for scheduled term and then move forward in 2019 with the correction. I don't think this is a bone that's a lucky blessing thrown at us to get us through the Baylands. I think we should do what the voters said. And what would you say if Donald Trump said, I'm going to give myself an extra year? We wouldn't be happy right now. Or we might be happy. So,
Yeah, it's interesting you make that last statement, because that was something that resonated with me from Sharon when she brought that up. When we had our workshop, of course, as a council member, you wrestle with these things prior to coming to the meetings, and then you talk it amongst your colleagues. If there wasn't the Baylands project, to me, it's a no-brainer. You do, 3 years or 5 years. With the Baylands, it makes it complicated, and we talked. We had that conversation with the attorney. I think it's going to be difficult when you're running and you're supposed to be making decisions and on this. But I do agree with folks in regards to democracy and how the right way to do it. I mean, deep in my core, that's where I'm at. And though it is going to be challenging, and in some ways I wish we didn't have to deal with a particular item that you're going to possibly making a decision on around the same time as you're running for office. But none of us expected that the state was going to throw this down. You run in these odd years, and 2017 was going to be the time that 3 council members would run for office. So this is a new thing. if the community was in support of, yeah, I understand where the council's coming from, they should run for that, or they should extend the term an additional year, maybe that's different. There's going to be times, though, of course, when you have to make tough decisions, and the community's not going to like where you're coming from. And so, I'm just going to let you know, I listen, but, ultimately, in the end, I have to make the decision myself, taking in all the information. And there might be times when, and there has been times when I made a decision that folks in the audience and at home didn't like, but I did it because I felt it was the right thing to do. In regards to this, I think either doing a 3-year term or a 5-year term. I don't want to do the 4-year and then the 3-year. I'd rather just get right to the even years with both the 17 election and the 19 election. So I hope that we can perhaps finalize that tonight, either 3-year or 5-year.
I don't mind if we make the change in 2017, but still have the election in 2017.
No, absolutely. There's going to be election in 2017 and 2019, but either for a 3-year term or a 5-year term,
Either one's
everybody in the community knows what they're voting on, and I think that's the right thing to do.
I'd be happy with either of those two scenarios, 3 or 5, whatever the council's pleasure.
Okay. Do you want to say something, Clark?
No, I'm trying to understand what it is that you say. What's the proposal?
Okay, so not doing the 6-month or 1-year extension, but having the 2017 election, but either running as a 3-year term or a 5-year term in 2017 to get you to either 2020 or to 2022.
As hard as it is to run, I'd prefer a 3-year term, but, a 3-year thing, that's just me. I could do either one.
You look like you were going to say something, so I was waiting to see if you were going to say something.
No, I'm not ready to vote now.
And you know what, and we,
Table it.
yeah, no, we
Yeah.
can table it.
Yeah.
So
Just table
we've
it.
expressed our feelings on it. It's something that we have to
if
do
you
right
guys
now.
are ready to vote, I'm gonna either abstain or vote no, because, I don't, I hear what you're saying, but really I don't agree. I already said what I said, and that's where I'm at, so.
So would there be a point to bring this back later? You probably don't foresee your opinion changing, right?
Let's do this. We don't need to vote on it right now.
When do we need to vote on it? Or when does the city council need to vote on it? I should say that.
You need to have a plan in place by January of 2018. So technically you don't have to do anything until December of 2017. But if you do nothing, then presumably the election will go ahead in 2017 with a 4-year term.
I see.
Okay, so I'm sorry, Michael. So the council needs to adopt a plan when?
By January of 2018.
By 2018. Okay, so we could, at the next council meeting in January or February, the council could finalize what they'd like to do.
Sure, we can bring this back to your meeting whenever you want, if you want to do it in
But-
2017.
If we are going to still hold an election in November of 2017, when do we need to let the register or the candidates know that we're going to do that? So that would be our timeline on when
Yeah.
that candidate season
Yeah.
starts.
Probably by your first meeting in July of 2017, because that opens I think it's typically the window opens up toward the end of July.
I'd prefer not to wait that long. If it's okay with the council, I'd like to see if we can just put it on the next agenda in January.
Why can't we just vote on it now? Do we have to have a second?
I think, a council member has asked to have some time, and I want to respect that. So,
You can vote on it if you want, but I'm gonna vote no.
Because Clark seems to be communicating that even with that extra time, he's probably not going to change his mind.
I understand that, but there's more than just voting for the, to either extend a year or to have the vote, or have the election in 2017 and 2019, but it's also 3 years or 5 years.
So are we asking staff to come back with some options under your suggestion? Or what are we trying to do here?
So what I'd like for us to do is have it come back before the council in January, and we decide the 3 or the 5 year is separate from the extension, because it sounds like we need to make 2 votes. Correct?
Well, I'm trying to read the tea leaves here, and I'm hearing 3 council members say that they would like to have the election in 2017 and 2019, but the terms of those office would either be 3 years or 5 years. We can bring that back and have 2 different ordinances, one dealing with a 3-year term and one dealing with a 5-year term, and then the council can have a further discussion, and they can either introduce one of those 2 or go back to what you had tonight or some other option.
So, I mean, you could have a council member say, no, I don't want, I don't want to have the election in 2017, I'm for the extension. You
Correct.
have the vote, then, once the vote on that has been finalized, then it's, okay, is it going to be a 3-year term or a 5-year term? And then all council members can vote on that as well.
We'll bring back an ordinance A, B, and C, A dealing with the one that you have in front of you tonight, the B being the 3-year term, C being the 5-year term. You're not committed to vote or to introduce any of those, but at least you'll have the language of those 3 options in front of you at that time.
Oh, okay.
I'm still troubled though by, if we go with your suggestion for the 3 of you that we hold the election in 2017 as planned, then I'm troubled by what the city attorney has said about, what we would be constrained from discussing during candidates' night and on the campaign trail. Because obviously the Baylands is the major issue in our city, and if we have our hands tied and basically can't say that we have an opinion on it, I think that's going to be very problematic for the voters to make a decision.
So we were going to be in this position no matter what, right? So I think that our voters are very smart. And I think that they would see how wise it is to reelect the same 3 people who have been looking at all of this information and reviewing this information. Certainly our constituents are not sleepy, right? So they're paying attention. And I think that they would see that it's wise to reelect the same people. I think they would, I know they would see that.
Assuming that they run.
Assuming that they run, exactly. Assuming that they run, that's right. But I think ultimately we have to trust them to make the right decision. And I think that the voters will understand that the Brown Act is here for a reason. And because of that, on candidates' night, we may not be able to talk about those things. And I think that they would understand and that they would be willing to compromise on that for us listening to what they want to do. I still think that you can go door to door and talk to people at their homes and say, like the statement I just said, this is how I feel about it right now, but we're still reviewing the information, and, I'll be ready to make a decision when it's that time, but this is how I feel as of now. Putting it on literature, that might be a little different story, but that's why we have our city attorney, right? To help guide us through these moments that are challenging, and we're going to be here anyway.
So,
Well, I just want to say, though, I think it's really important if we do stick with that timetable that, that the candidates, when they're going out to people's homes, that not only are they careful about what they're stating in their opinion, but that the facts that they're stating are truthful. Because, with the last election, I had heard that there was information on the Parkside plan that was being disseminated that may not have accurately reflected the process. And I think that then that throws itself into the discussion of the plan itself. And I think it's really important to make sure that we're accurate with how we describe the projects and the process and, you know, whatever the facts are, because the voters are relying on that information, especially when it's coming from a candidate who's sitting on the council. And so I think it's a really important consideration as well.
But you're allowed to change your mind too. I mean, you can say something and you can change your mind, and as long as you tell people, hey, you know what, just like I did tonight, hey, you know what, I was really in agreement and I thought this is a good idea and here are all the reasons why. But I've now come to realize with new information that I've changed my opinion on that, and I think it's okay to do that as long as you're honest. And if you're on the campaign trail saying one thing but you really believe something different, I think ultimately, you know, that's something between you and God, right? So
Okay, so we need to move on. You know, you know, you're not running for a re-election during this time. You know, so it's going to be
I'm not-
tougher for us.
Of
if
course,
we
it
decide,
is.
right?
I think the city attorney's got to.
Yeah. So I think we're good there. So let's put. I want to move on. So can we? I think we've had enough discussion about it. We've all agreed that it'll come back on the next meeting in January.
With 3 options,
Yes.
ish.
Okay. Good. Okay. Presentation. The bicycle and pedestrian master plan. Randy?
Honorable Mayor, Member Tim, council members, good evening. Really happy to bring this item forward to you, and I know most of you are going to say, well, Randy, that's because you're a geek engineer, so you love doing master plans. But actually, when I step back and I think about this, I do enjoy doing these master plans, and one of the reasons, particularly with the bicycle and pedestrian plans, is it gives us the opportunity to just kind of reset ourselves for a moment and take inventory of what we have and where we've come over the years and what sort of accommodations we do have for our bicyclists and our pedestrians. And then it allows us to go out and to talk with a detailed stakeholder group that the council appointed, and it also lets us reach out to the community and see what their aspirations are, to see what their desires. And then when we've got a professional consultant on board, it allows us to take those ideas, those aspirations, and develop them into a specific suite of packages that we can use. I'm sorry, ma'am, should I take a moment?
Will the public be able to see without the lights dimmed, or,
Yeah, I think it's state law. I'm going to double check that, but yeah.
or on the television? Okay. Oh,
it was just the introduction.
I thought he had, okay.
Thank you for that, ma'am. I was actually using the introduction as an opportunity to let Ingrid get the lights up and to get the presentation up and down, so that's why I was speaking slowly. But the last thing that I was saying is that it really gives us an opportunity to put together a suite, a prioritization listing of projects that really reflect where this community wants to go as we move forward. So I'm delighted to bring this forward to you. We've been working on it for over a year now. Those of you that were involved in the process will recall that Hugh Louch was the primary principal representing Alta. Hugh is not with us this evening. Hugh is actually assigned to be out of area this week. I talked to him a couple times this week as we were preparing for this, and although he didn't say it, I get the impression from his description of the never-ending darkness and the freezing weather at his assignment in Juneau, Alaska, that he would much rather be with us tonight than perhaps in the current assignment. But he's going to be ably stepped in for by Jeff Knowles, also a principal over at Alta. So with that, I'll turn the meeting over to Jeff. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council, public, staff. Thank you so much. I am stepping in for Hugh Louch, Alta Planning and Design. Again, my name is Jeff Knowles. I'm really excited to bring to you a culmination of effort that was, ably led by staff, and really excited to bring to you this draft bicycle and pedestrian master plan. Our agenda in this next 18 slides is to walk through our process and share with you some of the results and recommendations that are in this plan. We're going to talk about the purpose of the plan, the process, the existing conditions and goals, the way that we evaluated projects and prioritized them for you, and also next steps. This plan documents what bicycling and walking is like now in Brisbane, reasons for improvements, and a strategy to make the city safer and more comfortable to bicycle and walk for transportation and recreation, and that's for residents of all ages and abilities. We went through a process that looked at your existing conditions, the situation on the ground today. We looked at your existing plans and adopted policies. We used that to assess the needs right now in your walking and bicycling infrastructure, to develop recommendations, and from that, we put those into an implementation plan so you could be strategic about the way that you implement the plan. Community involvement was a cornerstone of this plan. There was a working group made up of members of the Complete Streets Safety Committee, the Park Commission, Open Space and Ecology Committee, City Council represented by Mayor Lentz, and supported by staff. The working group met twice in person and reviewed all of the deliverables at each milestone along the project. We also had a survey that was completed by over 90 different residents, and we had 25 people interact with us at a farmers market event. We feel like these are good numbers for a community of this size. The final community event is tonight, after which the plan will be finalized. We looked at where there were walking and bicycling facilities right now in your community. We noticed connections, to key locations being talked about at, to Caltran, trailheads. Right now, 4 are noted on this map to connect you to San Bruno Mountain State Park. Local destinations like City Hall, schools and library, and employment centers like Sierra Point. We assessed community priorities. Through the technical working group, we identified, and the survey and the review of your adopted plans, we looked at a couple different areas. One is connections to existing and proposed trails through the town and to the mountain. We looked at safety, that's personal safety, and safety from vehicular traffic. Consistent priorities for connections, consistently looked at strong interest for the public in having additional bicycle facilities through town. There was also lots of interest from the working group in improving wayfinding. The plan includes a section on wayfinding, I think it's on page 35, 36 of the plan, that includes technical details and some preliminary sign designs. We also saw an interest in having educational materials. A map of existing facilities that I just showed you is in development right now, and that'll be a user guide. We developed visions and goals for the plan. Right now, the vision is a connected network that accommodates all users and is designed to improve safety and increase walking and bicycling in Brisbane. We have 4 goals that support that vision. The first one is to connect Brisbane's bikeway and pedestrian system to the county and regional networks. Goal 2 is to integrate complete streets into the transportation network to provide for a balanced, connected, safe, and convenient multimodal network. Goal 3, increase walking and bicycling for transportation and recreation. And Goal 4, improve safety for pedestrians and bicyclists. Again, these were developed based on the review of existing and adopted plans and priorities the community has set forth and vetted through the working group. These are the proposed bicycle facilities. I want to walk you through some of these along with the pedestrian projects identified in the plan. These were identified by the community members and the project team through a review of safety, connectivity, and other factors. Again, they were vetted by the working group. There are several projects to improve bicycling conditions in the community. Some of the key projects include resurfacing Crocker Park Recreational Trail using stabilized decomposed granite, connections to destinations like high-quality connections to Caltrain through a Class 4, that's a separated bike facility. Recognize that the city doesn't own Tunnel Road and that future development may drive implementation of that project. Another important connection will be to Sierra Point for recreation and commuting. That's local and for regional commuters. Within town connections, we know Valley Road bike lanes to connect newer parts of town, and also Park Lane and San Bruno Avenue Class 3. It's a bike route to provide connections through older Brisbane. Finally, crossing improvements at a variety of locations, especially the US 101 ramps. That's something we heard from bicyclists right now as a key point for improvement. Turning to pedestrian walking improvements, we want to look at a couple different areas. One is returning to the Crocker Park Recreational Trail, since that's a shared use facility. It's something that will serve bicyclists and pedestrians. Sidewalk investments in several locations, Park Lane, South Hill Drive, others where feasible. Several crossing improvements, the community park to the shopping center, improving crossings near schools to make safe routes to schools, and associated trail crossings. We also want to add new staircases in town to expand the existing stair and path network, which we know is so important. drive this forward, we developed some project evaluation criteria. Appendix D in the plan has a detailed evaluation of all of the different identified projects. The criteria used for the evaluation include the ones noted here. The analysis was primarily qualitative, which means we used available data and a set of threshold or standard to change from low to medium to high. We looked at safety, so we were asking ourselves, will the project address a known safety challenge or reduce the risk of a facility? We looked at a community priority, so was it identified in existing plans by the technical working group or by members of the public? We looked at project readiness, difficulty or ease of implementing the project based on available public right-of-way, and project complexity. We looked at activity generator connection, which is a fancy word for saying, common destinations. The project makes direct or indirect connections to transit stations, employment, or other key community destinations. And finally, we wanted to prioritize based on connections to trails or regional networks. The project's going to regional trail or bicycle facilities or ranked high. Based on the evaluations, we separated projects into 4 different types. So we have high priority projects. These are the ones that had noted strategic benefits. They received community support and were lower cost or more feasible to implement. So these are your best bang for your buck. And we have long-term projects. These are ones where you might have implementation challenges due to cost or other factors, but were highly rated. They have a high strategic value to the community and could provide some great benefits. There are also opportunity projects that were lower in priority, but maybe easier to accomplish, right? Potentially creating an opportunity to fund these through other efforts such as resurfacing projects. And finally, there are low priority projects, not a lot of community support, not a strong indication of benefits, not easy to do. These are the ones that the city is least likely to pursue, but priorities can change and funding can become available at any time, so we wanted to make sure that these were included as well. Again, projects can move between any of these buckets based on changing priorities in the city. We wanted to create it so that it could be flexible. We've introduced many of the projects in the 2 maps that I've already shown you, but I wanted to walk through just a few of these in case you had questions. As mentioned, high priority projects are those that receive significant community support, expected benefits to safety and connectivity, and are relatively low cost or feasible for development. This list that I'm showing you here expands on the city bike network by providing Class 2 bicycle lanes along Valley Drive and Old Country Road, and creating signed bike routes along San Bruno Avenue and Park Lane. We think in combination this would create a backbone network of routes through Brisbane. It also includes improved bicycle and pedestrian crossings at US 101 on and off ramps, and improved pedestrian crossings between the community park and shopping center and at Park Lane in the downtown core. Also improved crossings of Valley Drive and where Crocker Park Recreational Trail crosses several roads. The longer-term projects are more significant investments that received significant support but would require additional studies or right-of-way acquisition to implement. These projects may be appropriate to apply for grants to help leverage city resources. Key projects here include the resurfacing of the Crocker Park Recreational Trail, new higher quality bike facilities along Tunnel Avenue and Sierra Point Parkway, and sidewalks on the South Hill Drive, Park Lane, and Old Country Road. Again, these are projects that are already shown, just sorted into the long-term bucket. Finally, the opportunistic projects are ones that weren't high priority, but that they may make sense to implement when other efforts are in combination nearby. These are all relatively low-cost projects and may be able to be implemented through other efforts. For example, consolidating driveway access to Brisbane Village Shopping Center may be appropriate if that area is redeveloped as part of the Parkside specific plan. Adding bike parking would be also recommended as the city has the opportunity. So we heard clearly that wayfinding was an important component of the plan. Chapter 4 in the plan provides guide.
Jeff,
Yes.
can I ask you a question on the last one? Who established the priorities?
That was, the priorities went through the working group and were shared.
Who was the working group?
Working group were city council, had a staff member, city council, the park. Yeah.
You?
I represented
listed.
the council.
Yep, it's also, I think, listed early on in the draft, the specific members.
And we also had members of the public.
It's
as
on
well.
the second page.
I apologize if I didn't make that clear.
Okay.
So on to wayfinding. So Chapter 4 in the plan provides guidelines and potential destinations for wayfinding. In addition, several preliminary sign concepts were developed. These are based initially on the Manual for Uniform Traffic Control Devices, which kind of dictates some of the design choices we can make, but we wanted to provide at least some ideas about where the city could go to make their own imprint on kind of community context-sensitive wayfinding. We have versions of those for both bike-focused signs and pedestrian-focused signs. We also have developed some concept share the road type signs, which could be useful on some of Brisbane's narrower mixed traffic streets. The wayfinding signs would be deployed in conjunction with a walking and bicycling map that will be developed later this month. This map will show key destinations, recommended walking and biking routes, and information for safe walking, bicycling, and driving. Those preferred routes would then be appropriate to include wayfinding signage as part of the overall effort. One of the project summaries already developed and is the Crocker Park project summary. This was approved by City Council as part of a submission for an OBAG grant through San Mateo County. This project, as I mentioned, involves resurfacing the Crocker Park Recreational Trail with stabilized decomposed granite, which lasts longer, is lower maintenance burden, and more environmentally friendly than asphalt or concrete, and it can accommodate both pedestrians and bicyclists. I'd also mention that it also meets ADA. A second project summary will be developed on a project of the city's choosing. At this point, I'm happy to answer any questions that I can. I've got a copy of the draft as well, and thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it.
All right, thank you, Jeff. Council members, who wants to start with questions for Jeff?
I don't have any.
Derek?
No, I'm impressed with the report itself, going through it, because there's things that I wanted to look at specifically, and I found it in there, and I was very happy about that. Even though the priorities on some of them aren't really that high, but I think you did a great job on capturing, our trails, and from bicyclists and pedestrians. So I'm quite satisfied with the body of work.
Thank you. Yeah, we had a good group. But really when you get down to it, the priorities are for the council.
Yes.
And these are just suggestions, but really it's the council, when we go into budgeting, we will prioritize what we want to spend our money on. Plus also, directing staff to, if there are certain grants to be had, and support that as well.
And if I may supplement that, Mr. Mayor, as you were alluding to right there, one of the opportunities that comes up is there are different grants, different funding opportunities that focus on specific projects. So there are some projects that, even though they may be low on our priority list, they may be a perfect fit for the grant that comes up next year. Whereas there are some that may be really high on our list that we struggle with finding the perfect fit for when they're big ones. So there's that interesting mix in there, but I think I agree 100% with what you said. This is a prioritization based on how it fit with the criteria, the subjective criteria the consultants put together. There was also some meshing and kind of voting with it within the stakeholders group. But at the end of the day, you all control the purse strings, and so you're the ones that determine which of these projects will be built as we move forward.
Laura?
Great, thank you. It was a wonderful presentation, very comprehensive. I did have some questions for staff, perhaps. I had emailed a few of these, and I just wanted to restate one of them for the public to hear. So in the staff report, it states that there's a recommendation for cut sheets to be prepared, the plans or specifications for them to be prepared for the project along Sierra Point Parkway and Lagoon Way, which I note is the more expensive one compared to the one on Valley Drive from Bayshore to Silver Spot. So my question was, if we wanted to move forward with the less expensive option, why is it that we would be recommended to prepare the cut sheets for the more expensive one?
Well, in common terms, ma'am, I'm trying to flog the consultant to the maximum extent possible. And what I mean by that is they're under contract to provide 2 sets of cut sheets. And so the more expensive project to construct is going to be the more expensive project to design. It's going to take more engineering resources. It's going to take more graphic resources to prepare those cut sheets. The less expensive projects we can probably handle by staff internally. And quite frankly, the project that we're recommending here is a Class 4 bikeway. That's not something we're familiar with having designed, so I would really much rather have Alta design that for us and prepare those cut sheets so that as opportunities come forward, we've got something prepared by people who are familiar with that modern-day best practice.
Okay. And the one along Sierra Point Parkway, so can you describe exactly where that is? What I'm picturing is is that the one that goes along the lagoon out towards
Yes, ma'am.
the hotels?
Right,
So
right.
right now, what does it look like?
So right now, it looks like a Class 2 bikeway lane. It's a shoulder. It's just, you've got a white stripe separating you and your bicycle from cars going by there at 45 miles an hour, and that's it. Years ago, I think when I came here almost 20 years ago, the speed limit was closer to 35 miles an hour out there, and the bikeways had just been put in. Over the years, as intensity has picked up out at Sierra Point, you all are familiar with how we do the traffic studies and how we set the speeds, and we base them based on the 85th percentile. That's a long, long straight stretch of road with great visibility, so cars can travel along there safely at 45 miles an hour. I bicycle on that road. It's
Feels a little unsafe.
Yeah, I'm okay doing it, but I wouldn't have brought my kids when they were younger.
Yeah, I remember walking when we had the 8 Thomas hearings. I walked along it, and I felt like the traffic was right next to me.
It's very close. It's very close, and it's very fast. And so that's
it's
why
one-
that's why the consultant has proposed the Class 4, because Class 4 is a completely separated bikeway.
Right.
And the distinction between the typical Class 1 that's also separated is the bikes that are going in opposite directions are on the same side of the road.
And is there enough space without going into the lagoon?
Oh, sure. What would happen is we would just eliminate, if you will, the Class 2 bikeway that's on the side closest to US 101 and just shift the lane lines over.
And is the speed limit there 45? I thought it was 25.
Oh, ma'am, it's
It's
45.
45.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's why it feels fast. It is. Yeah.
Okay. All right. And then I guess comment I had to the bike racks was that there were a couple of shapes that were proposed, and I wanted to suggest that we consider something a little more creative, maybe butterfly-shaped racks. I know I've seen leaves in cities like Burlingame, something a little more artsy that can reflect our town. I think that would be a nice touch.
I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff, for the presentation. So I have a couple questions. Kind of piggybacking on the two questions that Mayor Pro Tem Lori Liu had mentioned. So in the looking at the proposed bicycle facilities, so going down Sierra Point Parkway Road. So on this map here, we got it as a Class 1 shared use path. So I mean, if we do the Class 4, I mean, I totally agree that we should have the separation. So we're looking at a bicycle separation and a pedestrian separation combined. So I'm not familiar with the,
Right.
the Class 1 and the Class 4. Class 4 seems to be just bicycle. Class 1 is both.
That's correct, actually. So Class 4, your separated bikeway, it's exclusively for bicyclists, and it provides the actual physical barrier between motor vehicles and bicyclists, and the Class 1 is a shared use facility, pedestrians and bicyclists mixing together.
Okay, can you have a separated Class 1?
Class
Alright.
1, by definition, has to be separated from the roadway.
Has to be, okay. So in your map here, you got Class 1,
Right.
but then in the cut, you're recommending Class 4?
I think you could, there are different ways that you could do it, depending on the needs you want to meet, but you could have a Class 4 and a Class 1, or a Class 4, which is just moving bicyclists quickly through the area, and a Class 1, which would be more for families, slower bicyclists, or joggers, runners, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I like to run out there.
Right.
I like to have a safe place to run. I think parents would like to have a place to walk along the lagoon that's safe. You can't really walk along the lagoon in the weeded area.
Right.
So, yeah, whatever we put forth, I think should allow pedestrians to walk on that.
I agree, sir. I think that's part of the challenge that we're going to have to look at, is making sure that because clearly, you're not the only one who runs out there. Whatever day you're out there, you see pedestrians walking, whether they're just trying to get out to the tubes or whether they're walking back from the hotels or people exercising. So, yeah, we need to respect that. We certainly wouldn't put something out there that would preclude pedestrians from using it.
Okay, good. And
So-
oh,
To follow up, really quickly on that, the trail that goes around from Costco, part of the Bay Trail there, what class would that, just for a frame of reference, what class trail would?
That's a class 1.
That's-
The BCDC pathway?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am, it's class 1.
Perfect, thank you, I didn't, just wanted to get that in my head while you were talking about it.
Yeah, and then on page 29 it has the bicycle shapes. I was in the city of San Mateo last night, and they have bicycles, right? They're really fun and I think artistic.
Right.
These ones aren't really exciting.
My only
so,
caution and suggestion to council when looking at artistic ones, find opportunities to take these shapes and make them artistic. The reason these shapes are there is because 2 points of contact. That's for the bicycle rack needs to perform its primary function, which is to secure a bicycle. We've seen a lot of artistic bike racks that were done by artists and welders and all sorts of folks that can be easily dismantled or don't meet the primary function. So there's lots of ways to combine them together. It needs to be some sort of form and function together. But yeah, there's lots of different opportunities, and be happy to share some best practices.
Yeah, when you do the final, I'd like for you to provide
Sure.
some fun but feasible.
We've got lots of
parking,
examples that we've
yes.
recommended in communities all across the country. So.
That would be great.
Sure.
And then, so then going to the pedestrian facilities, so, I'm looking at the map here, and I know this isn't a final map, because I don't see any of the stairways indicated, because we have some stairways that need some work, when we talked about that during our meetings.
I see those showing up in N18 and N19. Those are the green dot locations on the pedestrian facilities map.
Oh, okay, so okay,
I'm
so I
sorry if
didn't
that's
see
not-
the staggered line going up this, up the stairway.
Maybe
But
there
that's-
needs to be more consistency with your existing facilities legend.
Well, it is a small map, so I guess if you expanded it, then you wouldn't need the dot anymore, and you could show it. I'm just thinking, for the end user, for the public, when they want
Correct.
to use something, they get their app or whatever, they go to the city's website, they can see how all of these stairways and potential, these other trails are all connected.
Yeah, point taken.
It's easier than a dot. Okay.
Thank you.
And then, let's see. I really like the sign options that you've proposed here, incorporating the city's, City of Stars and the mountain and the marina and the bay. I think that's pretty cool. And hopefully we can do something fun like that.
I think it really set you guys apart.
Yes. Okay. On page 42. Okay, so the CMAC funding program, right? Congestion Mitigation Air Quality Improvement Program. So in the third sentence, it says purely recreational facilities are not eligible. And the Bay Area CMAC funding is administered through the Metropolitan Transportation Commission. So one of the things that we had talked about at the last stakeholder meeting was the name of the Crocker Park. And so, in the document, it talks about the Crocker Recreational Trail. So my concern is that if that's what you're calling it, you're limiting your ability to get particular grants. I mean, this, trail is through the industrial park. It has many opportunities for people to get off of it and go to work. What if it was changed to the Crocker Industrial Park?
Jeff, let me
Trail?
answer that. So let me jump in, Mr. Mayor. So I think the council will recall that at your November 3rd meeting, we brought this project forward to you. You approved resolution number 2016-42, and the way we described that project when we submitted it for the Bicycle Pedestrian Improvement Program grant funds, we described it as the Crocker Trail Commuter Connectivity Upgrades Project. So that's how it's been presented and forwarded to CCAG.
Okay.
So it's a distinction from what it is in here, but that was how we wrapped it up and sent it to CCAG to go to MTC.
Can you explain how the name of it again?
Sure, I know I said it really fast. It's the Crocker Trail Commuter Connectivity Upgrades Project.
Thank you. All right, cool. All right, so, yeah, if we can take that language and have it be reflected in here, or is that?
If
just so we have
I can,
consistency.
as a former grant funder, what you call it to me as somebody administering grant funds is fine. What the community knows it as is probably what you should retain, that common language, that common name. Trying to change it, make everybody else use this kind of.
Well, you know what, I mean, I think what Randy just
Yeah.
described is a mouthful.
Yeah. And that's keywords for that grant funder. They pick up on that, and they
What if it was just the Crocker Park Trail and got rid of the recreational part? I think we all know I mean, what trail isn't a recreational
Right.
opportunity, right? So I don't think we need to really call it out. Just so that, when you take your document and you're submitting it,
Mr. Mayor, you got a lot of comments on this?
I'm almost-
Because, I mean,
I-
you're on the committee, and, I mean.
well, just because we're going to
I don't
move
know
it
if it's going
forward.
back to you guys, or what?
I'm almost done.
Yeah, okay.
So,
But we're just receiving this draft,
yes.
Comment.
so.
We should make some comments. Yeah, so then just the last thing is, you talked about the Measure A money, and so during the last go-around, we tried to get some funds through Measure A, but the criteria was that you had to connect with the county park. And so I see that kind of lacking in the document. I like to, incorporate that. I know the county is coming up with a new master plan for the HCP, I guess it is, or I don't know if there's, I'd like to see us show that connectivity to the park,
Okay.
potentially through the Crocker Park Trail and the potential trail that is proposed, I guess it's through the McKesson property that eventually would connect with the mountain, but yeah, I mean, if we could flesh out that so that we're showing that we have opportunities
Okay.
to get to with that money, that would be great. Okay, so that is it. So I know we had a member of the public who is not here anymore. Oh, no, you are here. Peter, did you want to come up?
Thank you for allowing me to speak. I'm retired and I bike quite a lot. And I'd just like to make 3 pleas. One is, can we get Tunnel Road paved? It's a major thoroughfare used for bicyclists. At the moment it's really bumpy. And also there's a water hazard when it rains because of drainage, as I'm sure you know as you drive along. And the way I say it's a major thoroughfare is, I read in the report that there was a fatality on Bayshore. There've been no fatalities on Tunnel Road. Today, even in the weather, there were twice as many people biking down Tunnel Road as there were on Bayshore. Secondly, there's a California law about giving bicyclists a 3-foot berth. And I can quote from it here. I'd like to see some signs that emphasize that within the range of signs actually shown within town. I didn't see any ones. They might have been included, but I didn't see them. Unfortunately, with the law, I'd like to say this here, and that is law enforcement officers must witness a violation to issue a fine. Bystanders' accounts or video recordings made by the bicyclist on a GoPro, for example, aren't admissible. So if someone drives really close to you and one knocks you off, unless there's an officer there to see what happened, you're powerless. That's why one of the reasons to go and have these signs around that would indicate what's the law meant to be. And thirdly, if we're going to put in speed bumps, can you make sure that there's a slot so bicyclists can go through it so they don't get bounced up and down? Thank you very much for your time.
All right, thank you.
It's a
Peter.
great report.
Yeah, and I just want to emphasize that I thought you guys did an awesome job. Randy did an awesome job. I mean, this document is so professional. I mean, this is what we were looking for. We make that investment so that then you can go out and get those grants. And so, what was our budget on this? It was 50 or 70?
50, it was 50, sir.
$50,000, right? And we are going to cash in big time in recouping on that investment. So thank you very much. You want to? Okay, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Tony Varios. I understand the whole combined budget here is something like $1 million. So if you're talking about 50,000 out of the city's budget, that's a lot of leverage, right? Did I get that right?
Continue, yes.
All right. So that's good. I'd like to hear more from the consultant about what the decision is that justifies the cost and maintenance of the crushed granite versus asphalt and concrete, because in many places, as it appears to be shown in this cover photo that's up there right now, the ground heaves for one reason or another and maintenance is required. So I don't know what it takes to maintain that crushed granite, if that's something the city staff would be easily able to do, as opposed to filling a hole or a crack in asphalt or granite, or concrete that they do already. They know. So that's one issue. And further, I didn't see in the presentation a new sidewalk on Valley Drive, on the north side of Valley Drive, where there isn't one. That's what I'd like to see, a sidewalk. It seems easily feasible there. There is one on the south side. There's these cattle kind of, I call them cattle barriers. A couple of them metal cages that were put in on Valley Drive. They're supposed to, I guess, protect a pedestrian. It seems like their main purpose is to hold a reflector sign on them. I don't know. I know some people use them. I know we don't. But those things I don't see as a great safety feature, something else for a car to run into. But the majority of these ideas are great, and I'm sure, as you said, you'll work out the priorities as time goes by. So it's an interesting project. The big congratulations is to the staff and everybody who's trying to figure out how to get all this leveraged money.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tony. Okay, so in the interest of time, I think we'll move on. So, all right, next up is the consent calendar. So, any items?
Well, the minutes I had submitted edits, they were, I think, typographical. Ingrid had indicated she would make them. So do those need to be pulled, or are you simply going to make those edits?
I did too, and I think Ingrid will correct those as such, so.
Then I don't need to pull them.
Well, I'd make a motion to approve items A through H, unless somebody wants to pull anything, which is.
Excuse me, I'd like to, just lost my page here. I'd like to pull item D, if I may.
C?
D, as in David.
Oh, D.
Okay, Clark, A through C, and then E through
Okay.
H.
A through C and E through H.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Carried.
Oh, can we also add we had a draft change for the minutes submitted by Dana Dilworth. Did we want to include that?
Yes.
Yeah, that'd be fine.
Okay.
Thank you for mentioning that. Okay, Jerry?
So I just had a question. I see that we're looking to buy a new fire apparatus or approve a new fire apparatus for wildland fire control. And I'm wondering if this would be a piece of equipment that's shared in the JPA, or would that be something that Brisbane Fire Department would be required to do the maintenance and the staffing and the training, and what additional staffing and training would really be needed for this?
Well, I'll let the fire staff address the issue of the training and staffing issue, but in terms of the vehicle itself, it would be owned by the city of Brisbane. We have not, at this juncture, gotten into shared arrangements on equipment or maintenance of equipment between the three entities.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor and members of council, it's a pleasure to answer your questions. If I understand exactly what you ask, it's how we would staff that particular apparatus. Is that the first question? So we would use the same staffing that's at the station, but this would be a specialized piece of equipment for fires that we may have occur on the mountainside primarily. Right now, with the apparatus we have, we can't get to a fire that's off-road. And so this would allow us to take the same personnel at the station, put them in the proper piece of equipment, and get them to a, visualizing a small fire that we could control before it became a big fire.
So is there specialized training that our fire department and the firemen would need to go through to be able to operate this kind of equipment in a different kind of terrain?
There will be some specific training for this apparatus because they've never operated it. However, the overall training they've already received as firefighters, and every spring we do a major training right here. It's just this one piece is missing for us to be able to, like I said, actually go up and get into the road systems above a town and go to the fire location. And that's what this will give us opportunity to do.
And right now we rely on CDF to take care of those kind of fires for us.
Well, we would rely on other resources from other parts of the county. Mostly South County has some of these types of apparatus, and also CDF.
So we're on a share, they respond
Mutual aid,
if we need
mutual
it.
aid, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, actually, this was on the agenda a month ago, and I had pulled it off and had discussion with the chief, and we did a field trip and borrowed a unit from South County, I think Redwood City, was it? Yeah. But it was a two-wheel drive, and went out and did some performance maneuvers with myself and Clay and the chief here, and
That's
I was very
cool.
happy with.
You should have let us know, we would've come.
And it was it was something I had concern with, and what this, they could even use this, I think, to respond to medical if they needed to, right? I mean, because it is a smaller unit in a sense, and it's pretty fast, stout, and what it does is offer that if they do have to fight some off-road fire, that the vehicle can actually move while they're spraying down, and we don't have any type of capability like that right now, even if we're able to make it there. So I'm definitely in support of this, and I'm very happy that you took us out on this field trip to convince me that this is the proper way to go. 'Cause, in the past, we bought a few eggs, and I didn't want to see another one.
Yeah, no, for sure. So this truck's gonna be four-wheel drive?
Yes, it will be.
Okay.
Yeah, and great job on, speccing it out and everything, so I appreciate the work. So.
And then it's gonna be stored here in Brisbane?
Yes, it will.
Okay. And then will it be used by the other cities in the JPA?
It would be a part of the mutual aid system and the JPA system we have. It would not be a piece of apparatus that we would intend to send out to the statewide mutual aid system. However, it would be for use within the county.
Okay. And then the full costs are coming solely from the city of Brisbane?
That is correct.
Okay. All right. I mean, I think we definitely need the vehicle. I think if it's going to be shared, by everyone, then, there should be some reimbursement to the city,
Mr. Mayor, it's not going to be shared by everyone. I mean, look at it the same way as you have your own fire engine.
Yeah,
It's
no,
ours.
All right. I said if, but
Well,
it sounds like that's not going to be an issue. So,
No, it's
okay.
not.
That's fine,
Well,
Clay.
it's mutual aid. It's mutual aid, so we go out to help everybody else.
No, I
just like
understand.
They do us.
Okay.
Motion to approve item D, purchase of.
Second.
specialized-
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. You know what? Why don't we just take a 5-minute break?
That sounds like a great idea.